Hello and welcome to our session ClimaECO, ABB, IBAS, KNX and HVAC. My name is Thorsten Reibel from the company ABB and I'm working there in the Competence Center Europe Smart Buildings. Yeah, today I'm acting as a Busch-Jaeger guy, and Busch-Jaeger is an essential part of our smart buildings portfolio. Yeah, ClimaECO, ABB, IBAS, KNX and HVAC. Around 2 years ago, we started to launch a new range of HVAC devices in KNX, around 30 devices, extending our, let me say, applications in KNX with HVAC. So not only room solutions anymore, but also extension to the distribution and to the generation part in HVAC system, but also to management, to interfacing and much more. And I would like to present you in the next 20-25 minutes what we are doing here for around 2 years already. So it's not completely new, but it's developing all the time right now. So ClimaECO, what does it mean? ClimaECO is ABB's campaign to highlight HVAC solutions inside the ABB IBAS KNX system. So we talk, of course, about KNX. Yeah, and it consists of new developed products in the last 2 years around, but also established or existing KNX devices from ABB can be integrated. So 30 new devices, but all the other products are not lost. And of course, we are developing our solutions all the time, and further components are expected in the next years for KNX. And KNX, I think, is HVAC is a very important application within KNX, beside lighting, and of course, used in many, many projects. So let's have a look to this so-called building pyramid, consisting of the field level, of the automation level, and management level. Yeah, and in the field level, room temperature control, room climate control, we're working already all the time. With all components, so with room temperature controller, with actuators, and of course also with other components for lighting and blind control and so on. Yeah, then the automation level, dealing more with controller, with logical functions, but also with time functions, is a part we already touched with KNX in HVAC. But the management level, building management system, interfacing to other systems, data logging, and superior functions were more or less not touched. So if you have a look to ClimaECO, of course, it's still working in the field level, but more and more also in the automation level, and also touching the building management system with interfacing thanks to our application controller, which has an so-called BACnet interface integrated, many more functions, but also BACnet interface. And BACnet is a very essential further protocol in building management system, building automation, especially if we are talking about HVAC. Yeah, what did we do? We have an overview of our solutions, our products. On the right side, you see the user operation and the controllers or actuators. We extended here the range. We have a lot of more components now, but as mentioned, you can use also the existing ones. On the left, the so-called central HVAC automation. There we talk about distribution, heating, cooling, circuit controller, generation, boiler chiller interface, and also a special component, building automation controller KNX. In principle, our ABB PLC from industrial automation connect to KNX. Yeah, let's have a first view to the components we launched in the last 2 years. We extended our range of sensors for KNX by a so-called Busch-Tenton sensor. It's a component with classical KNX functions, but also HVAC functions behind. I will explain a bit later what is behind this additional component. Yeah, then a non-KNX device for simple room temperature control or fan speed control if existing. Not a KNX device, but will be connected to our controller to have also a consistent solution. Further devices like our split unit gateway can be integrated to connect split units via infrared. And then we replaced our fan coil controllers or fan coil actuators at that time by fan coil controllers. So a range of 9 components to cover the application fan coil control. So fan coil units are very important units in heating and cooling solutions. And we used it already in the past a lot, these components, but now a new range with more functions. For example, we can control also now 0 to 10 volt fans additionally. Simple valve drive control can be used here as well. And both components I've just mentioning have integrated controller. What does it mean? You can also use components for room temperature control in the room without controller integrated. Simple room temperature measurement is required. The rest can be done then directly in this D-rail component. Heating cooling circuit controller, I will talk about this a bit later as well, just for distribution, boiler chiller interface. And here you see not a typical KNX device. This is building automation controller just for integrating a powerful PLC into KNX. Yeah, and then in my opinion, the heart of the system, the application controller, a pure KNX device, again here, with different functions. You will see later what's behind. One is, for example, the BACnet interface, but a lot of intelligent logical functions are possible, a web user interface, and many more. I will show you a bit later as well. To understand our consistent solution now, and the target of ClimaECO is to have a consistent HVAC solution based on KNX. So you see here the green line representing the KNX bus cable, of course, and all the components are connected here to the twisted pair cable, except this building automation controller. This talks KNX net IP, but of course, no problem to connect it to a consistent KNX solution. Yeah, and on the right side, we call it consumption. There we have our typical room-oriented devices, so fan coil controller, split unit gateway, valve drive controller, and of course also the operating elements, room temperature controller to do the job in the room. We did already before, but now we can also touch the distribution part with the heating cooling circuit controller and the boiler chiller interface, the generation of hot and cold water together with the boiler chiller interface. Yeah, and for management tasks, we have here the application controller and the building automation controller. So everything can communicate with each other. So it's not only an isolated room solution anymore. We have a communication to all the other parts, to create a consistent, powerful, energy-efficient solution. That's our task. So everything is communicating with each other. So any requirements here in the room can be sent back as a feedback. Maybe any actions in the heating cooling circuit has to be taken. Any action has to be taken in the boiler or chiller. And any information has to be sent via BACnet to a superior building management system. All these things are possible. Let's have a bit deeper look into the technology. And if I talk about ClimaECO, it's mainly for the water-based heating and cooling solution. And what you see here, an example for fan coil unit control. So here only 2 fan coil units in 1 or 2 rooms. Of course, we can control many more with our fan coil controller and any room operating element, whatever it means. Here's a flow of the cold or hot water, and here's the return flow of the cold and hot water. This we are doing in the room, of course, but to supply the right water into the rooms, we need a distribution part, means a heating cooling circuit controller, a mixing valve to supply the right temperature to this unit. A unit can be a collection of rooms, maybe an apartment, and this mixing valve has a task to supply the right water regarding temperature, but also the right amount of water. So we control also the pump, and we measure the flow and return flow temperature to control it in the right way. And this can be done by the heating cooling circuit controller, which is a KNX device. Furthermore, generation in our building of hot and cold water, we can also interface with the boiler chiller interface. And then, of course, supply also here the right amount of water and the right temperature for the whole solution behind. And the whole building can consist of many, many heating or cooling circuits. And on top, we have to manage everything. We have to visualize everything. We have to send values maybe via BACnet to another system, superior building management system. All these things can be done by the application controller. So an example here for fan coil units. In the next slide, you see the same more or less for valve drive control only. Of course, you can mix it in a building. You can integrate also split units, depending on the room, depending on the situation. But the rest is the same here. Management, generation, and distribution. Not really different. So that's in principle our consistent solution now for HVAC in KNX. Let's have a bit deeper look into the different products and the applications behind. I mentioned already the valve drive control. Now we are on the room level here. And typically you control electrothermal valves for any radiators, for cooling ceilings, or of course also floor heatings. What can you do? You can control it via KNX from any local room temperature controller, any in our range, but also from other KNX suppliers. Of course, it's the beauty of KNX. We are compatible. So then you have a room solution. You don't need a controller here on the right side because the controller is also already here integrated. So a simple, we call it RTC slave, which measures only the temperature and has buttons to operate and display to show what's going on, is here sufficient. Or you take the simple non-KNX device, connected via 4 wires to the inputs here, and then it's also a consistent solution. In all our components, mainly all our components in HVAC, we are able to connect it to our ABB IBUS tool. It's a service tool for commissioning, for testing, for simulation. It's not programming the devices, but helping in the phase of commissioning. And very helpful in HVAC solutions, because you see all the values and parameters, and you can adapt this a bit and test whether it's properly working. So fan coil control, also an important solution in HVAC, in local HVAC control. Of course, you have a heat exchanger and also a fan to blow out the cold or warm air out of the box. And we control, of course, the valve, the amount of water, and we control the fan speed. And you see here a 4-pipe system. Heating and cooling is separated, but of course we can control also a 2-pipe system where you have only one valve existing, maybe only for cooling, we will see. And an option is to operate an electrical heater with a relay contact here. For example, if you have no water-based heating existing in your building, it's not necessary because very few days per year only needed. Then you can say, okay, I integrated an electrical heater and control the room temperature by means of the fan, of course, and I turn on and off the electrical heater. It's also possible. Yeah, we have here a range of new 9 devices, complete new components to call different kind of valves, different kind of fans. So 0 to 10 volt is no problem. Electrothermal valves, 1 or 0 to 10 volt fans as well. All these things are possible. So we cover here the complete requirements from the market. So as already mentioned, also here integrated controller and this ABB IBUS tool support is existing. Yeah, let's come to the heating cooling circuit control. So now we go out of the room a bit. We come to the more powerful solutions behind and the heating cooling circuit control. You can see here on the right, we have a mixing valve. So we mix the return flow with a flow coming from the boiler or chiller. And then we deliver the right temperature. We have an own pump in the circuit and we measure flow and return flow to control everything. Yeah, and our heating cooling circuit controller has a task to control via the mixing valve the right temperature. To turn on and off the pump, and to do this, we have to measure the flow temperature at least. Yeah, and it's a controller inside. How does this component know what is the right set point, the right temperature for this circuit here behind? This will be done then later in our application controller, and there's a software module behind to control everything the right way, depending on different parameters. Yeah, one parameter is, for example, the outside temperature. Of course, it's, let me say, very cold, and we talk about heating here in this example. Then we need a higher flow temperature coming from the boiler or chiller to be supplied to the heating or cooling circuit. If there's no demand for heating in the circuit, all valves are closed, then we can also shut down here, maybe the boiler, or we can turn off the pump as well as here in the circuit. So different parameters, different adjustments are possible. And you see in the middle, the so-called curve, supply temperature depending on outside temperature, which of course is dynamic. The lower the temperature is outside, the higher is the supply temperature. And all these things will be taken into account, and the whole system will be controlled the right way. That's our solution here. The boiler or chiller, I've mentioned, we can interface this. So the boiler and chiller has to provide the right amount of water for the whole system, all the circuits behind, all the rooms behind. And this we can interface as well via a 0 to 10 volt analog output in this boiler chiller interface. So also here, depending on the demand, we do the right things next to the boiler and chiller. And but we do not control the boiler and chiller. So it's still a standalone component. So we do not touch any, let me say, internal safety mechanisms. We only say what is the right set point. We can turn on and off the pump. Of course, we can turn off also the boiler if needed. So if there's no demand for heating or cooling, we can turn it off as well. So it's an interface, and yeah, to have a consistent solution, we need also contact to the generation part in an HVAC system. And we do it via KNX, as you can see here. Everything is communicating on KNX. Coming to the sensors, back to the room, I mentioned that we created a new range of sensors for our ClimaECO range, so-called Busch-Tenton. And you see here some examples. It's a typical product for the commercial projects. Different versions available. You see here pure buttons, 8-volt and 12-volt. But these components has also a room temperature sensor integrated all the time. So with my controller in the D-Ray components, valve drive control or fan coil control, I have already a complete solution. But of course, it's also interesting to have real, let me say, displays to see the status in my HVAC solutions. So it's also available, of course. And then we have further versions to have only a slave version available. What does it mean? We can control everything from here. We see everything, but the controller is in the D-Ray component. So we save money, but for the function, there is no different. Then also complete room temperature controller if you have no controller in the D-Ray component, only actuators. And on top, we have devices not only for room temperature measurement and control, but also relative humidity and air quality, CO2 concentration. This is also available. And all these are also is integrated controller. So 3 controller for room temperature, CO2, and also humidity, if you would like to have this. Yeah, it's an international products for different local standards. Can be also surface mounted, no frame necessary, and different colors, of course, are available. Yeah, to show you that we have also the option to integrate any other room temperature controller, I have here another example, Busch Room Touch. It's a touch panel, so a display, but for room functions. Also in different versions available here, but it's a room component made of glass and metal. So you can touch it, you operate it like your smartphone. You can create up to 10 pages here for in total, 30 controls, 30 different functions. Integrated brightness sensor or proximity sensor. So if you enter or approach this device, then you will, or the LCD display will be highlighted, for example. For room temperature control also useful because there's integrated room temperature controller and temperature sensor. And you see here some example how to operate this. Here on the right side, maybe the actual temperature. You can change the fan speed. You can change the set point as well. You can change between heating and cooling if you want. All these things are possible. You can connect also an external temperature sensor if needed. So it's a multi-purpose device, also for room climate control useful. But any other KNX device for room temperature control, of course, can be connected to our ClimaECO system. We are open and it's KNX. So another simple solution to create a room temperature controller is this NonKNX device, room control unit. Just to change the set point, to measure the temperature, of course. And if you have a fan coil unit behind, to change the fan speed if you want. Nothing else. You connect it via 4 wires directly to the inputs of this device. You program everything in the fan coil or valve drive controller. It's the same principle. And then you have your complete room solution for room temperature control, of course. Now we are going to this PLC device. So this building automation controller based on an ABB PLC. And this is a further option, not for every project, of course, but if you would like to do some more. For example, you have to integrate any air-based solution. So air handling units, for example, has to be integrated. You need a lot of more in and outputs. Then you can use this device because it's an intelligent central unit, the building automation controller, and you can add here extension modules, flexible I/O modules, up to 10 with analog or digital I/Os, whatever you want. It's a KNX device. You can connect it to KNX via KNX Net IP. You see it here. We connect to the Ethernet connection here. And of course, you program the logic, whatever you want on the PLC side. That's another software. And the integration into KNX via ETS. So it's an ETS application behind. It's a very powerful solution and offers you more options if you need more intelligence, more logic, integration of other components like air handling units. And then you are prepared with such a component here. PLC programming is not KNX as mentioned, it's a bit more, and we are working here with a so-called codices language. It's an international open, let me say, programming language for industrial automation, for PLC programming. We use this here as well. Then we are coming to this, in my opinion, heart of the system. ClimaECO is the application controller, which has in principle 4 different functions behind, 4 different independent functions. And one is the so-called BACnet interface. So it's a real BACnet interface, bidirectional between KNX and BACnet IP. As mentioned, very often we need also BACnet in building management solutions, in building automation solutions, and this is offered here. The second one is that we have a so-called web user interface integrated. So it's very easy to assess functions via the web user interface behind the application controller in all the ClimaECO components behind. To visualize functions, to simulate functions, to test functions. It's not a visualization, it's a bit less, but it goes in this direction. And then a lot of intelligent functions inside. Remember with the heating cooling circuit controller, I mentioned these predefined automation with this curve of supply temperature depending on outside temperature, for example. So it's a predefined software block, especially for heating cooling circuit controller, also for boiler chiller interface, for the rooms. We have time functions inside, data logger, and a lot of more features you can use here as predefined functions. Plus freely programmable logical functions we had already in our logic controller. We integrated this as well. So if you say, okay, the automation functions predefined are good, but not sufficient for me, you can use also freely programmable solutions here. So 4 different functions, all independent, and up to you what you are using here. And you program everything in the KNX world, in the ETS, with a so-called DCA device configuration app. We use more and more in the ETS for different products. Finally, I would like to show here a further integration ABB can offer right now as well. We are coming from KNX, and we are working many years for Mrs. KNX, and we continue with this, of course, but we have acquired a company last year, Cylon. Now it's called ABB Cylon, coming from the building management solutions. So pure building management solution based on BACnet IP. And thanks to our application controller, we can integrate this. So in some cases, we have to say KNX is not sufficient for HVAC, especially also if we talk about air handling and other interfaces. If you talk about Modbus integration, for example, all these things are possible here. So our target is to do, of course, as much as possible, especially in the room with KNX, also with HVAC, but of course also with lighting and shutter, whatever security, but to integrate a further system if needed, depending on project and customer, with this BACnet IP gateway application controller to more functions with other components. So building management system is a topic here, visualization and much more. It's an option, but I would like to show it here finally. And this is possible within the ABB world. Okay, this was my last slide. So again, my email address, Torsten.Reibel, Torsten with TH at the beginning, @de.abb.com. There you can contact me directly. Thank you for your participation. Thank you. Bye-bye. Ciao.